Our first question is from Wouter. I have 2 questions about the kettlebell press. And by the way, he has an issue that honestly I don't know if I've ever dealt with anybody with this before. I have 2 questions regarding the kettlebell press. 1, I can half kneel press the 24 kilo, 3 sets of 8 with good form fairly easily, which is a really good workout and not bad at all. But if I try standing up, I can barely do 6 reps. What gives? I don't know. Generally, when I work with most populations, when you take away the other leg, doing the half kneeling, standing 1 foot presses, it really seems to cut down the person's stability. But in your case, having both legs underneath you, cuts back in your reps. I find that fascinating. I'd love to have seen a video on this. I assume the half kneeling press will be harder because of the added instability, and I think so too. I have a very solid core, so why are the standing strict presses much harder for me? Without a video and only guessing, one thing I see a lot of people do on the half kneeling press, and I don't know if this is a problem, but they really tend to launch it. So when you're on the half kneeling position, there is a little bit of ability to let the weight descend a little bit. And so you're getting a little bit of a slingshot or rubber band effect by the offside. I only say that because I picked that up on myself when I was doing the perfect workout and getting tired. The perfect workout is 3 sets of 8 left, 3 sets of 8 right, plus 30-second hangs in between. It's a hip thrust, a hard hip thrust. It's the goblet squat to overhead squat, and then a suitcase carries. And what I noticed on the days I was coming in a little bit tired, a little fatigued, I started launching it. Wow, I don't know if that's the answer, but it could be that simple. Or you could be just really connected differently than the rest of us, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's probably a real advantage. It'd be interesting to find out if you're really tall or just, how your body parts are. It's interesting. I have a person on the inner circle. I don't know if they took it as offensively, but I meant it from the heart that when they lift, they're very, very long. And when you're long, your squats, your pulls, your presses are going to look different than if you're, rather short. Being short with smaller limbs, shorter limbs can be a real advantage with some of the movements. And of course, being tall and long is a huge advantage in all kinds of other things. So those are just some guesses, and frankly, I don't know. To improve my press, I should, as you often say, simply press more, which is what I'm doing. But out of curiosity, what would, if any, be a good way to boost it? He says this: drop down to a lower weight and do more reps, go up in weight and have fewer reps to build more strength and muscle. And of course, in this example, it's going to be both. Building strength is we used to use the word matrix, but now matrix has a different meaning. But so, adding volume, is always a good thing in the weight room. The problem is it gets you to that little problem. You did 10 sets of 10, 100 reps. But if you did it with, a 1 kilo weight or, 2 to 5 pounds, and you just did a lot of garbage reps, it's not going to help. Intensity, of course, is how close you get to, maximum. That's a very simple way to explain it. And in my books, I go through all the details because there are so many definitions of intensity. But it is true, as you nudge up those bigger and bigger loads, you get stronger. Easy strength, by the way, is based on the idea is trying to get your 60, your 70, and your 80% loads to feel lighter and lighter and lighter, with the understanding when your 80% feels pretty easy, you can almost guarantee your hundreds up. And then, of course, the third way you can get strong is density, and that's basically the same amount of work in less time or more work in the same amount of time. Which one of those three is going to help you? Volume, intensity, or density? Well, the answer is all three. Personally, and I think I'm putting together a hypertrophy book, is I do think, and this is just because this is what I was taught and this is what I've seen the most success with, is I think in the beginning you work with volume. So when I people read articles about you only need 1 or 2 sets of lifting, very often the groups they're proving it with are untrained people, untrained adolescents, or people at a senior center, and you have them do 1 set of 15 and the miracle happens. And it does happen. Well, the tradition is you keep nudging those reps up. And once you get to a point where, you get to mindless repetitions, you then add load and you do 2 sets, and then you then add load and do 3 sets. And for probably most of our listeners, 3 sets is probably enough most of the time for your goals. Obviously, people do much, much more, and that's fine. When it comes to the second one, increase in intensity, it's always that idea that it's great to increase your load, it's great to increase your intensity, but you have to do it, you can't miss. The reps have to be very well done. And when I mean that, there's that whole subcategory of, if you're doing strict presses, but you're using your legs, and compare that to a strict press where you don't use your legs, cliche time, apples versus oranges. When it comes to most people, and this is what I've discovered, density for most people is probably the best thing. That's why I like kettlebells. I think kettlebells are the master density tool. They're just, if all you have is a 24 kilo bell, like you, for example, getting the same amount of work in less time is density. All 3 have to be done. All 3 should be played around with a little bit, and the art and science of strength comes down to that. So generally I push volume first, then we move into intensity, and then we move into density. After that, of course, and you could do 3 weeks of each, then you swing back to more volume. Ideally, when you come back to more volume with a heavier load. So in your case, if you're doing 3 sets of 8, let's just say you're doing them in 6 minutes, a fun thing to chase on a density workout is try to get that 3 sets of 8, both sides, in, faster. So 5 minutes and 45 seconds, 5:30, 5:25, 5. And once you start to slide into around, 4 minutes, you're probably too strong for that bell now. It's always a tough question. Now, as you move up to that heavier bell in the next round of volume, for you, you're handling the 24 pretty easily. Now you move up to the 28 or the 32. You have to build. Now with the 32, you're gonna have a big drop off in your reps. So you'll just build the volume up again. And then maybe if you can, if you have other bells are great. If not, do different variations. The bottom up, the waiter press. You're already doing half kneeling, so maybe stand on 1 foot, pressing. These are all ideas. And then after that, chase density again. As common as you think this question is, a lot of people miss it. A lot of people get caught in this little loop of doing just one thing year in, year out, which has value. I won't argue with that. But you do need to play around with those 3 qualities somehow to progress. And of course, the name in my game is progressive resistance exercise. Thank you very much, Walter. It was a good question. Thank you.